Hallo? Geht's euch gut?
How are you doing? Great. Are you there? Are you awake? Good for you. Lots and lots of people are tired more of the time, tired of the news. They have news fatigue. News fatigue has gotten so bad that news fatigue is in the news. And it's come up at Republica as well. There was a talk on it yesterday. War, crisis, catastrophes, how media companies are dealing with increasing news fatigue. And here's the statistic. 1 person in 10 in Germany actively avoids the news. 65% do it at least occasionally. And I must admit, I'm a journalist and I'm in that second category. And I'm going to tell you why. There's too much negativity, too much bad news. It's too much. Conflicts, crises, commotions all the time. And that used to work maybe when newsroom said only bad news are good news. Because bad news increase the attention of the recipients and increase circulations and ratings. I'm glad that used to work, but it no longer does. And I'm going to tell you why. Gen Zs, they're too soft. You all thought it, I said it. They immediately get an allergy if the sun is at 43 degrees instead of 38. And that's why we need constructive journalism. Because that is the answer. All right, hands up if you've been hearing the salt in my voice. Habibi back there is like, sister, I heard you, I even tasted it. I think it's an absurd illusion. In all this conversation about news fatigue, there's one aspect I'm missing. We shouldn't ask, what's the problem? But whose problem is it? Because TBH, the people are fine. They're chilling. They're not missing anything. Gen Zs might have allergies, but no, they're chilling as well. People who are allegedly news fatigued, they're not lacking any information. They're not hungry. They don't even have an appetite for news. At least not the kind that we media professionals are calling news. The thing that we're serving up to them daily or even hourly, they're like, they're putting it aside uneaten. So this news fatigue that's being diagnosed is not a problem of news consumers. It's a problem of the producers. It's us who want to reach them. We're the ones who want to bring our news to as large an audience as possible. And we're feeling the disappearing customer base, the lack of reach. We have the problem. And still we don't want to admit it. We're all like, oh my God, they're starving. And we go to the chef and we're all like, hey, that steak with a side dish, why didn't you replace it with a lentil burger? And I know we mean well, we want to do better, and still we're deluding ourselves and missing the point. People are still interested in information. They're just getting it somewhere else. On WhatsApp, Telegram, Instagram, TikTok, in all kinds of languages and channels from all kinds of countries, maybe also in conversation with their family, maybe also with the waiter in the shisha bar. The point is they're curating their own news sources and they're getting what they need. And of course, that makes us mad, especially the people with like the education from like the top journalism schools. We're all like, ew, fast food news. It makes you fat. Well, I'm doing quality journalism. I'm developing personas. I mean, fine, let's keep pulling personas out of our asses and pretend that we're on the pulse of society. Somebody's laughing. They're feeling. They think I mean them. I'm like, yeah, let's keep pretending. It doesn't change that people still won't come to our place to eat. These millions of people, they're not tired of food, but the restaurants that they've chosen are giving them two things that we won't give them, and that's two basic things. One, people that I understand. So a person with an audience who speaks one of the three languages I know besides German, Turkish, Korean, some street Lebanese, or somebody who speaks normal German, not the German with a stick up their ass. Hey, I have a membership in the university library. Talk to me normally. Tell me things with my sense of humor, with my references to the world. The second basic thing that they're getting is people that understand me, people who understand what it's like to go through the security control at the airport with a headscarf, people who know what it's like to be constantly pulled aside by police in random checks. These films, people who aren't part of a privileged elite, but who have been socially marginalized, struggling to survive, people who are fighting for their dignity, people who are working their asses off to at least give their children or grandchildren a better life at some point.
Okay.
All right. The people in the front row have understood it, but some of you might not have understood it because it wasn't academic enough. So here, in academic terms.
Uno momento.
One moment.
I need help, please. Ich will zur nächsten Slide.
I need help, please. Next slide.
Fehlende Repräsentanz.
Missing representation. Lack of diversity in newsroom undermines trust in the media, especially among marginalized groups who feel underrepresented. Low trust is a major reason for news audience avoidance. One-sided reporting. If editorial teams are not diverse and journalists share similar socio-economic and cultural backgrounds, this can lead to reporting that neglects certain topics, perspectives, and social groups. This can alienate parts of the audience and lead to news avoidance. Irrelevant aspects. Non-diverse newsrooms may have difficulty recognizing and serving the interests and needs of a diverse society. If news is perceived as irrelevant to one's own life, the motivation to consume it decreases. This leads to news avoidance. I need your help, okay? Is news avoidance a sign of fatigue? One more time. Is news avoidance a sign of news fatigue? No, thank you. And I want to go one level deeper. If there's somebody who's fatigued here, it's us media professionals, and it's about time that we woke up and actively understood that that we need to question not our product, definitely not our audience, but ourselves, our position of power, and especially the people who are working in public service broadcasting. They don't get that they're in a position of power, not at all. They're entirely asleep. And some people are sitting here and think like, well, Esra, what position of power are you talking about? I'm such a small cog in such a huge wheel. I don't get a say. And I'm like, I completely understand. Sure. But it's also a tiny bit like saying, well, I'm only living in a small room on the shady northern side of the royal palace. That's what some bro once said who was living at the castle of Versailles. What he overlooked was that he was surrounded by thousands of court officials, soldiers, and servants who were mostly lived somewhere like outside the city walls. And he was all like, my room is small and dark. He failed to see that thousands of people were living outside the city walls in dreadful conditions. The public service media Versailles of our days has developed over time. It's enshrined in law by means of the Federal Broadcasting Treaty, and it still has political support and lives on the bureaucratically organized funds of the population. And our media palaces exist. They're here. This is the ZDF headquarters in Mainz or the WDR headquarters in Cologne. Or the Panorama Tower in Leipzig, the second tallest building in Eastern Germany, or the 30,000 square meters in Potsdam near Berlin. This is where news is made.
Well, don't worry, stay calm. I'm not going to question the basic principle of public service media. On the contrary, I like the theory of it. I think it's good and important that we have such a democratic model or media system. It's fantastic, but we desperately need a total renovation. And before right-wing powers slate it for demolition, it is so counterproductive to pretend that this palace is immaculate and free of structural deficiencies only to avoid the supposed threat from far-right attacks. When we perform strength and pretend that the foundation is strong, you are missing the opportunity to fix the real flaws that will sooner or later lead to decay anyway. And now listen, these flaws in our media palaces that I'm talking about, they're not in the buildings. They're in their heads, in the culture. Because being part of this apparatus does something to you. I know. I would know. I used to be part of it. It does something with you. Spend enough time there and you'll forget that you are one of the few privileged aristocrats. You live in time you live a courtly culture, speaking a courtly language, where you take part in your courtly celebration with courtly music and courtly dance. And at some point, all you tell are courtly stories and you're producing courtly news. Power transforms us. It's not bad as such, but it changes you, it changes us. You don't need deep theoretical knowledge or read academic studies to know if someone is part of it or not. You can take off your blazer and you can take off the tie as well. You can use easy language. You can try to imitate youth language. It doesn't make you cool though. Put a foreigner in front of the camera, but still from 2 planets afar, I will see the white elitism behind it. Okay, you've taken me out of my concept so much. I'll have to see what I was going to say next. Okay, hang on. Oh, hang on. I'll have to look again. Right. Wait. One moment. Right. The view from the castle is not the same as the view of the castle. It makes a difference if I read a news article that from Tagesschau, the main German news program. Racial profiling, is that a praxis that can be proven or not? Or if my psychotherapist Lucia tells me how people deal with racist police violence. If people come to my practice, they are looking for a safe space where they can talk about the humiliation and the indignity without. So, news fatigue is an expression of a fundamental alienation. Okay, we've talked about culture, we've talked about attitudes, but it has to do with money, right? It has to do with budgets. It has to do about financial respect, respecting someone through finance. It's the moments when someone sits there and says, well, okay, WDR, the head of that broadcaster earns more than the chancellor. Is he being rewarded for gatekeeping? 10,000 euros for a 60-minute show. Wow, interesting. TJ Tese will have to work full-time as a cleaner for 5 months for that kind of money. So why should I believe a word they say when they have nothing, not a single thing in common with me? I'll go and listen to my fitness trainer Rahma, or the dede of my congregation, or the addressee next door. At least these people understand my life. Okay. Still, nobody is storming the palace. The media czars don't have to abdicate yet. And maybe this revolution will not be violent, but creeping. Because the classic mainstream media still have power and broad support, and they're safe, but they're losing more and more in influence, especially among the target groups that they thought they could safely neglect. They're losing more and more of credibility with those people. And this is this vacuum, and this is my favorite slide. This vacuum is where the other players enter that reach these people. These are the people that are close to the people. These are the people that produce information. These are the good ones. They exist. And I would like to say, this woman who just keeps talking about genocide, she's in this room. Can I have a large applause for her, please? Here, Nalan Sipar, who offers news in German and Turkish. Wow, does she do it on her own? Can I have an applause for her too? Boycott German lead culture, Sonja, who keeps showing us how the National Socialist traces still remain in the institutions. Please have an applause for Sonja. These people are there and they fill this vacuum. But do you know who also fills this vacuum and enters this way? Well, these are the players that play this narrative of the lying press. And if they have money, they gain in influence and then in power. Shall we let them have that? I would say no. It's not worth it, I think. Let's not take the risk. So what do we need? We need new German media professionals. And you know how it works if you try to recruit personnel from migrant backgrounds. You may have your recruiting processes all worked out, and you may be speaking to people of color proactively. Wow, of course, don't misunderstand me. These are the demands that I support 100%. This is the only organization that has supported me in my journalistic career and still does so. But this demand is not enough. Yeah, sure, it's killer if Julian remembers to hand the microphone to others and then does his little segment the way he always did, because, well, it's got to sound professional, right? You get points in the People of Color Counting Championship, but it's not going to change this courtly attitude of the media apparatus. Sure, it's better, Ignition Stage 2, if you, in the east wing of the palace, in a stuccoed hall, you put in some content network where finally the non-aristocrats, the plebs, can suddenly try out various formats for people with diverse interests and produce them. Great. But that won't change anything in the power structures of the palace if the leadership can re-staff these people at any time, repurpose the room, do with what they want with it. Okay, I've been waiting for this moment more than anything. Do you want real innovation? Should we really throw some shit at the fan? Ignition Stage 3, give up resources, hand over control, really let people do their thing. Break the routines, break the hierarchies. Innovation needs a room to breathe, to become reality. That's what we need. So you now might ask, Esther, so we'll make these palaces into a real people's palace. How? Well, not by having an open day once a year, and nor by turning a handful of rooms into guest rooms for guest workers. What, you mean creating completely new structures? Well, how about this? We could support other structures that already exist outside the palace. Outside the palace. Because when you open the window blinds of your palaces and look out, you'll see that the people are at the town squares. So take your money and instead of investing it in, put it into those marketplaces where the people are. Ignore the remodeling of the palace. Ignore the audience ratings, screw them. Let's let's talk about different kinds of audience figures. Distribute the license fee revenue. Do something with that. That money. And not just by federal states. How about by demography? How about 50% of the population who are women will receive 50% of the budget? I just want to say maybe 8.5 billion euro were taken through the broadcasting fee revenue. How about if we took this budget and put 27% of that to people with a migration history? Okay, it goes on. How about...
Okay, I think I have to be dramatic.
I'll have to be dramatic, I think. Yeah. What if 20% went to people that are older than 66? 20% are affected by poverty. It goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. 14% don't have a German passport. 11% are queer. 9% have a severe disability. 2% own half of the wealth. So I don't know if I want to give money to these people, because I think 2% is what they eat for breakfast every day. But, well, it's the thought, right? Just to think, let's put the money that way. And let's take a look at these budgets. Here, see, what are we prepared to release for new media makers? This money that we want to release, put it into a fund, and then, again, not to pay for the journeys of your media makers to the marketplaces, but to support those that are there already. People that fill a vacuum that has been caused by the public broadcasters abandoning those spaces.
I can't speak for anyone here. I can only speak for Karakaya Talks. We're Germany's only news channel with me as a presenter. It's so cringe that I have to flex with it. We put underrepresented perspectives to the forefront, and we're producing content, news, and talk shows with socially relevant topics. We promote a change of perspective with the goal of developing and strengthening an open and democratic civil society. These 10 million people of color, maybe we don't reach them all, but at least some of them. And let me tell you something, we're not the only ones. Who of you was at the BIPOC Media Fest last year? It was one of the first workshop and networking events exclusively for BIPOC media professionals from journalism, from content creation, and from cinema. And these are the people in the marketplaces. These are the people who are telling the stories today and tomorrow. This is Germany's media future. So let us distribute the license fee fairly together. Thank you for your attention.